If you haven't thought about your mid-funnel a lot, think about that. One that we really utilize a lot is we do video on top funnel for conversions, and then we'll remarket off of a 50% or a 25% view. And that's a really nice way that's not dependent on the pixel for building those audiences. And so that's an opportunity for you to just look at that mid-funnel. Have you been targeting your engagers? Are you targeting only people, everybody in the last 365 days? Might be too much. So, what kind of things? I rarely see email built into the mid-funnel either. People that are on the email list or have opened an email that haven't purchased. Target those people. Build out that mid-funnel more and make that more robust. So those are the things I would say right now that are doing pretty well.
You're listening to the E-Commerce Influence Podcast with Austin Brawner and Andrew Foxwell. If you want honest, transparent, and tangible results that deliver lasting value and revenue, this is your podcast.
Are you behind on planning for Black Friday and Cyber Monday? Klaviyo is here to help. Klaviyo is the ultimate e-commerce marketing platform for online brands of all kinds and sizes. With email automation, SMS marketing, list growth tools, and more, you've got everything you need to build strong relationships, keep your customers coming back. And with the holiday season right around the corner, there's no time like the present. Get up and running quickly with Klaviyo's lightning fast integrations, pre-built marketing automations, they're really slick, and beautiful email templates. Today, more than 50,000 brands like Living Proof, Hint, and Chubbies choose Klaviyo to help them grow. Whether you're a billion-dollar business or just starting out, Klaviyo is the e-commerce marketing platform for growth during the holidays and long after. Get a free trial at klaviyo.com/influence. That's KLAVIYO.com/influence. With SMS quickly becoming the most important marketing channel of the decade, many e-commerce brands are excited to get their piece of the pie. But with so many SMS tools popping up, it's hard to know which tool is the best fit for your growing brand. PostScript is a leading SMS marketing platform laser focused on one thing: building the best SMS platform for e-commerce brands on Shopify. Using PostScript, your team can grow a TCPA compliant subscriber list, use your Shopify data to create targeted text messages, campaigns, and automations, have two-way conversations with customers, and unlock a brand new marketing channel that drives big time ROI for your store. PostScript is trusted by thousands of growing Shopify and Shopify Plus stores to manage their SMS marketing. Stop treating SMS like email and instead respect the inbox, create hyper-segmented campaigns using your data, and make your customers happy. Start your free 30-day trial of PostScript today at ecommerceinfluence.com/PostScript. That's ecommerceinfluence.com/POSTSCRIPT. What's up, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of the E-Commerce Influence Podcast. My name's Austin Brawner.
And I'm Andrew Foxwell, and I am glad to be back, my friend. Glad to be back.
It's the triumphant return of Andrew Foxwell.
The triumphant return. Yes, absolutely.
And we are recording this triumphant return at exactly 5:16 a.m.
Correct. This is what's known as the golden hour in my life now. This is when the magic happens for me.
This is midway through your day.
This is midway through the day. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And I think for those of you, I have actually had a number of emails and tweets and messages and saying, hey, how's it going? What's going on? Austin was kind enough to give Gracie and I the space to have time with Nora, who is almost 8 months old now, and it was really, really hard. I'm not going to sugarcoat it, and it was really, really challenging from a mental health standpoint, and from she has some eating issues, and so that made it really tough. And so anyway, it took time away from the podcast, and needed to focus on our family for a little while, but every day is a little bit brighter, it's still not easy raising a kid in the middle of a pandemic. And I think something all of you can identify with, that this year is hard. This year, it's a hard year for people, but it also, holds a lot of opportunity this year too. So it's interesting to think about, but I just wanted to address that out of the gates and say thanks for hanging on, everybody that's listening.
Yeah, no, I'm excited to. I've also gotten emails and questions and from people being like, "Hey, where's Foxwell? What's going? Are you guys gonna do any more episodes?" So it's exciting to have you back. And I hopped on this thing. Noticeably, Andrew was like ready to go at 5, and I was like, "Okay, I need like 5 minutes to get up to speed here." But today, what we're going to be talking about is this is really an episode I've wanted to record with you, Andrew, for maybe the last month,
Mm-hmm.
and that is an episode doing kind of a state of the state of Facebook,
Yeah.
which is trying to figure out, what has really been going on, because this has been a wild time since during the spring. It was one of the best times and
Yeah,
for
absolutely.
paid social advertising and e-commerce, and then it changed, and it's been quite challenging, for not for everybody, but for many of our clients, uh, as we've hit end of summer, fall. And so, since you've got so much access to different accounts and you get to see so much, the episode today really is just kind of a deep dive into what's actually going on, and sharing some practical advice on what you might be able to do to get some better results.
Yeah, absolutely. That's really the goal of today. And I think, one of the bright spots of sitting in Nora's room in the rocking chair, feeding her or while she's sleeping, it affords me a lot of time to communicate with more people. And affords me a lot of time to read and to get people's take on things too, which I think is a big strength of what we do at Foxwell Digital, is to try to be that kind of conduit for a lot of it. So, I think the way that I started phrasing this to people was talking about the timeline. As you said, kind of spring, we kind of had spring scale, summer setback, and then kind of a fall fail, is how I've started to term it. And I think a lot of this, I think from a high level, what you as an advertiser or a brand that's advertising may have felt was, certainly there was a big shift to people's online behaviors in the spring, being in quarantine, being in lockdown before summer, and having the ability to, spend more time online, basically. And as that ramped up, there was just more daily active users. So you always have to think about this. And, many of us are going for conversions, right? You're thinking about it in overall audience. And you think about, of that overall audience on Facebook or Instagram, something like 10 to 15% of that audience might actually be converters. So you have to think about, as the overall pool grows, the overall number of converters grows too. And because of that, I think there was, a lot of, you make a lot of adjustments, right? You make a lot of inventory adjustments, you make a lot of operational adjustments, and you scale. And then you got into summer and people started to pull back on social. It wasn't a massive pullback, but people started to spend less time online. And that affected that overall pool as well. And then as we've come into fall, it's just been incredibly volatile. The platform itself has also been volatile. Facebook itself has also been volatile from an ads manager standpoint. And I'm sure you've seen this. I mean, they've done a lot of changes. They created a new
Yeah.
interface for comment moderation on pages. I mean, tons of stuff that they're rolling out. And of course, they roll these things out and then make you crazy because you're like, was it this way yesterday? And sometimes it's so different that you don't know where to find things, et cetera. So the reason I mention all this is because if you felt this, this is common. But I think woven through the narrative of these timelines is there's let's say 5 things that are common strategic, really strategic and tactical ideas that are successful, that I think have actually had some bright spots that we want to talk about today.
That sounds great. Before we dive into that, I want to hop on what you said a little bit about kind of the shifting behaviors, because I just wrapped up a 5,000-mile road trip through 10 states.
Mm-hmm.
And it was an interesting perspective because, I feel like being in so many different states and seeing behavior of people during COVID times in so many different states, people want to be back out and doing things. You can see that, like, the difference between the spring and the fall is that people don't want to be, they've adjusted the behavior literally to just do things outside. It's like everywhere
Right.
you go,
Yeah.
it's restaurants outside,
Mhm.
it's classes outside, whether that's, workout classes or hiking. And I think that's one thing that big adjustment has happened from Texas to Washington to Oregon to Colorado. Everything is just, people are just, more people are outside, and that's
Mhm.
off devices, which I think is generally pretty healthy.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I completely agree. And I think, the way that I think about this is, it's different. We do have a lot of international listeners on this podcast. And I think there's different rules that apply in other countries, right? I mean, I think in the United States, there's a smaller pool, right, of those people, of those converters. And that qualified audience is really, when you start to scale, there is a scale in the United States that you hit. That's say 3 to 5 million in spend a month on Facebook or Instagram, that it's really hard to get anything past that, unless you're investing in a lot of brand awareness from a DR standpoint, is my point. And if you move into other countries, user behavior shift too. Like we have colleagues in Europe, specifically like in Germany. We talk a lot about Germany because I have a lot of close contacts there. And Germans, results were actually pretty good through the summer and into the fall. Still, they're not bad. They haven't shifted as much as they have in the United States. And I think that the political climate in the United States contributes to it as well. I mean, you can look at all these macro factors, and they do have an impact. And so I think that's a big one.
One thing I've been talking about has been political spending.
Well, certainly.
So much political spending. You can go and look at in the ad library how much is being spent weekly from top candidates, and that doesn't include any of the PACs or any of the smaller ones or any of the things that you don't see on the front page.
Right.
What about Australia? We have a lot of clients in the coalition from Australia. What have you seen there? Is it tracked with US?
Yeah, I mean, it has. Australia is really, it is a microcosm, a small subset of what the US behavior is like. The issue with Australia that you run into is there's just much more market volatility in terms of performance. I mean, there's certainly been market performance. And when I say market performance, I mean Facebook ad performance. There's certainly been volatility in the United States. It's been up or down in the late summer, fall. But as we look at Australia, if there's even a small shift in user behavior, that group gets so much smaller because it's just a smaller overall group of people.
It's the size of Texas, which
Right.
always blows my mind when I
Yeah.
when I look at the population. I'm like, okay, Texas and Australia have the almost exact same number of people, and so just putting it in perspective.
Yeah, exactly. And so I've seen in the last week, we've audited 2 huge accounts for Australia. I mean, these would be, one of them was spending something like 180K a month Australian dollars, and then another one was spending almost 120 or something in that range, if I can remember correctly, which is big. That's a lot of spend for Australia. And both of those accounts, their strategy is basically wide targeting. They don't, with a demographic overlay, so they know their core customer. One was older demographic, one was younger women. So they just overlay that. And then the lever that they pull basically is creative and placement. So they swap out creative regularly in the news feeds, and then they swap out things in the stories feeds, and that's their strategy basically. And there's some bidding strategies that are nuanced in there, but that's about it. And I think there is a lever that you can pull in terms of audiences, and one of those that I think is the first of the 5 things we can talk about is an audience tactic called the Shack Stack, made popular by Nick Shackelford, who, I don't know if you know this guy. He's on Twitter. He runs a company called Constant Creative. Incredibly nice guy. And he basically came out with this idea where you're putting different sized lookalikes all in the same CBO that are what I would call high value lookalikes. So this would be 2% add to cart. This would be something like one campaign budget optimization campaign, and each ad set would have, one ad set would be 2% add to cart, initiate checkout, website custom audience, purchase. The next ad set would be 4% of the same things. The next ad set would be 10% of the same things. And
And
this
you're
is
putting that all in.
the same campaign budget optimization campaign.
Okay. So
Correct.
it'd be one campaign and then boom, in the ad set, multiple
Correct.
stacks
Yeah.
of 2, 4, 10% lookalikes.
Could be 1, 3, 5. 1%,
Okay.
3 could be 2, 4, 8. But the point is that you're using different sizes. And the theory on why this works is Facebook likes options. And so a campaign budget optimization campaign, I'm just going to start saying CBO. That's what we talk about at CBO is the abbreviation for that. The CBOs, some audiences on some days and some sizes are going to be performing better than others. So you give the CBO that opportunity to flow spend between those. Traditionally, what we would have done and what we actually teach in our CBO course that we have is you would separate the CBO by size. So you would have a 2% CBO, and it would, in each of those ad sets would be add to cart 2%. Another ad set would be add to cart or initiate checkout 2%. Another one would be website custom audience 2%. And but this lumps them. So this gives it a lot of options. It gives it a size option, and it gives it the ability to, let's say, if an add to cart's not hitting, it's going to look at the initiate checkout data or the website custom audience data or the purchase data, et cetera. So that's an interesting option. And between those, you're actually utilizing the same creatives, right, in each of those ad sets. So you're neutralizing, your social proofing, which we've talked about, of course, across. You're neutralizing creative as the variable. This is a popular thing that really, I think, he started talking about this in May. I would say April, May, I think was when it was. And people have started to use it. And it's a scale. There's a lot of scale here. And I've seen this work in multiple countries. I've seen it work in the US, in Germany, in Australia, et cetera.
Interesting.
There are areas where it can be used as let's just say a tack on to scale. It may not be something that's like this is all you need to scale. That's an audience tactic that I think you can give a shot to if you have it.
Cool. That's really, really interesting. What are some other things that are working right now, or some tips that people are having rougher performance, things they can try and experiment with?
Yeah, I mean, so one of these levers that you can always pull in terms of account stability is bidding, right? And there's most of us will use an auto bid, which is saying to Facebook, find me people, at whatever cost it is. However, there's a tactic that we used in 2014, 2015, back in the old days, that was a bid override or a bid cap. And this is basically you're utilizing auto bid, but then you take and say, okay, I'm willing to pay usually 2 to 3 times your account-wide cost per acquisition cost. So if it's $50 CPA goal and you've been paying $50 CPA, you would bid $150. That is a tactic that you can try if your account is being unstable, or a lot of times it might be underspending. Let's say you're in a really competitive space. So you could utilize a bid cap and see if that brings us stability. And then if it is spending at, let's say, $150 a day bid cap, and let's say you're paying $55 or $60 CPA, then you can what's called walk it down. You can, over 48 hours, you can say, okay, I'm going to try bidding 140 now, and then I'm going to see what kind of spend I get. I'm going to try bidding 130 now and see what kind of spend I get.
And try to find that sweet spot. That's the kind of the goal there.
Exactly. And this is a lever you pull if your performance is, again, volatile. Let's say it's up or down, and it's not spending. We've seen all of these things happen. And so bid caps are an interesting one. We have a women's fashion client, and bid caps are what unlocked the account for them, because there would just be days that all of our prospecting campaigns would spend like 20% of their budget. It's like, I don't understand.
Sure. And that's super, super frustrating, especially if you've been in a position where it was going really well. Right. Which I think also, putting a lot of this in perspective, it's when you get really good results over a certain period of time and then it goes poorly, your expectations are set the good experience from like spring, early summer. And then, okay, now it's not working nearly as well. So what about on the creative side? Have you seen any changes, things that have evolved over the last couple of months?
I mean, creative wise, generally the same types of things are still working. I think you could call user-generated content or user-generated content looking creative is still better. So people reviewing products, showing it, what it looks like. I think the really thing we've seen this year that's been really powerful is what I will call UGC plus, where because of the 20% text rule being removed, so you can have ads that have text all over them now. I mean, you're going to pay more for that, but that rule is gone. People have been taking videos that are more UGC looking, and they'll put copy over them. So they'll say, 100,000 reviews, or it'll give context to that video, right? So
Sure.
because a lot of people watch it on silent. So if a person's talking, sometimes captions are okay, but it can also be faster and it can just add context to that account. So that's something that we've seen a big part of. The other thing that we see from a creative standpoint and that we've been doing a lot with is, and some of this is political. So because of all the video being used in political advertising right now, static images seem to be working better. But Facebook likes to have options. And one of the Power Five that Facebook talks about, and then I can go, that's a whole other discussion, but one of them is dynamic creative testing. And a lot of people just don't see results with dynamic creative testing, where you put in a bunch of lines of copy and a bunch of images and video and let Facebook figure it out. It doesn't work as well, especially in the US. And so what people have done instead is taking, let's say, a carousel, a video ad, and a static ad, and they've put them all in one ad set, and then they let Facebook decide which one it wants to show. So that's an interesting option too. That's not something I would have traditionally done, but that's something we've definitely seen become more popular, which is letting Facebook say, today I'm going to serve a carousel, tomorrow I'm, let's do the video, and giving it options basically.
I've seen the same thing with adding text to videos, little context type things, like highlighting some of the features that you might not notice about it. One of the accounts I was doing an audit and looking at some competitor accounts, and one of the things I noticed there was a coffee company, it was showing the coffee and then the text was coming up explaining why the coffee was better, like organic, things you wouldn't be able to tell by looking at the picture, but were the selling points of the product.
Mm-hmm.
And that seemed to be quite effective.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that is, and you also think about these things being, man, it's going to take a lot of time, but you can do a lot of this. Actually, I've done a lot of this in Canva. It's pretty easy, and I know Florian in the
Capwing.
Yeah, Capwing has a ton of options, right? It's not as hard as you think. And it's also doesn't have to be expensive necessarily. So that's a big one from a creative standpoint. From a structural standpoint, there's different options there too. And I think this is what we'll call the all-in-one CBO that we've seen become pretty popular in this time. And what this one is basically, if you feel like you've tried everything and nothing's working, what you can do is put remarketing, prospecting, and middle funnel all into one campaign budget optimization campaign and letting Facebook figure it out. That can work, even though it's not something I would try first.
When you say you've tried everything and nothing's working, what does that mean to you?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, typically what this will manifest itself as is something like, yes, it was working. And then I tried to build out traditional funnels and those don't seem to be working. And I tried to build out traditional audiences and those don't seem to be working. And I tried different creatives and that's not working. I tried bidding stuff. That's not working. I tried different landing pages on my site, and I just can't get the numbers back to where they were.
Sure.
That's typically where we'll say, have you tried putting it all in one CBO? This is not my primary thing. This is more reporting. This is me reporting that this is something that we have seen do okay as like a last ditch kind of thing.
Sure.
So there's an interesting line as an advertiser on Facebook and Instagram that you're always, riding, which is, how much do I lean into what Facebook's talking about all the time, right? And one of them is CBOs, is campaign budget optimization campaigns, which is a big automation tool by them. And so that's why, sometimes it does work actually, as they say it will, but it's more rare.
That's a good one to keep in the back pocket. If you go through all these different things and you're like, oh man, we're still struggling. What I've seen recently from multiple clients is really trying to figure out what unique, like key has seemed to be trying to find out the structure that uniquely works for them. And sometimes it's totally different than what
Oh yeah.
other people are doing.
Mm-hmm.
And, what I've seen recently has been a couple of clients who've made some shifts to try to like get leverage, meaning that they hired a very talented media buyer
Mm-hmm.
to work with them. And the structure shifted towards something that had worked for the media buyer in many different accounts.
Mm-hmm.
And it just didn't work. And they had, and that it was incredibly challenging because they're like, okay, I know I'm not like the best media buyer in the world, but I'm getting better results than somebody who's done this 100 times. And it seems like after going through it multiple times and really doing like a post-mortem, it was like, there is a specific way that their account works. And it's not the same way that other accounts, the best practices are. And that's okay.
Oh yeah. I mean, I think that's a really interesting topic. I mean, we could do a whole podcast on that. I think that there are accounts, and you may have one of these accounts in Austin. We've talked about this with clients we've worked with, where they're like held together almost with like glue and like popsicle sticks. It feels like, like you look at it and you're like, this is a mess. It's not, how is this working?
Yeah.
But then actually it's like, fine. And a lot of it, I think, has to do with Facebook learning that account, what's converting and what's doing well. Yeah, just an understanding of like what's actually going to be successful, and
Yeah.
it being smarter than we are, right? We're trying to overthink it. That's always one that you have to look at it too and say like, interesting. And we do a lot of audits, and many times people will come back and say, hey, I tried this in the audit and this didn't work. And then they'll say, oh, I tried this and it really worked. And so it's just ideas, right? It's just like if you're seeing success and things are going okay, be careful. Don't try to change everything all at once.
Yes.
But then I saw an account yesterday where the poor guy was so frustrated on everything and it was going really well. And then it didn't start not going really well. And he started to make a bunch of changes. And then I went in and he had deleted everything. Well, that's no good because that takes away all your account learnings. So never delete campaigns, even if they're not working or they are old. That would be not advised. But anyway,
Yeah.
don't go nuclear.
Two questions on that. So one of them is around how long. So I think that there's something there that isn't talked about enough, which is around the learnings and around how long you need to run campaigns to really understand, like to get Facebook the information that it needs, target the right people. I have a couple clients who have different takes on this. I have two clients who they give them Facebook a lot of leash because they feel like in their experience, the more information they can give Facebook, and like it just takes time to ramp up new campaigns, like acquire social proof, and then also like the performance will stabilize over time. When are you pulling that plug? How do you think about that?
I mean, it's so different. I think generally my rule is if you've tried what are like all these expert recommendations, if you've tried a lot of things and you just are not seeing something after a couple months, that's probably a product market fit issue more than it is a Facebook ad issue. It's either that or it's a pixel issue. It's an implementation issue. And this is where working with someone that has knowledge of Facebook pixel catalogs, and the match rate there, and making sure that things are installed properly is a part of it. And then if both of those things are you feel like you have a good product market fit and you've proven that in other places, and your Facebook, let's say, catalog and match rate and the pixels installed properly and things like that, and all that's okay, then it may be that you just need to, think about prospecting in other areas and using Facebook as really a middle to low funnel tool. There are places that it's going to be hard. I mean, look at something like pets, for example, and pet stuff. That's a very competitive category to prospect in.
Sure.
And if you have a CPA that's anywhere under $50 to $75, it's going to be really, really, really hard to get anything going because of the competitive nature of that, and because of how when everybody else comes to war with all their guns ready to go, and you're walking out there with one thing, it's really hard to compete in that space. You need to think about it much more, in a much more holistic fashion, and probably come at prospecting with more channels like Snapchat and email, you know what I mean? Like just more there,
Sure.
as a part of it.
A different flywheel
Absolutely.
to start moving things forward. Another question that has come up recently that I think some of our listeners are probably asking themselves: how do you think about like ramping up the budget? So on the flip side of this, right? Like I have clients that have been doing well, right? They've
Yep.
been doing well during fall, and they're trying to ramp up their budget. How do you think about when to ramp up budget? And yeah, if things are going well, what does that look like in your mind? What's kind of the ideal way of scaling up their ad spend?
I mean, if things are going well, I think the first thing, even before you think about budget, that you need to look at is, do I have the inventory to do it? I've seen this happen so many times where people start to scale, and then something happens in the supply chain and they're screwed, and then the ad account's really in trouble because you run out of inventory, and then your feedback score is low because people aren't getting things in time, and then your CPMs increase. So Facebook does have
Be careful.
feedback score. Yeah, they have this feedback score now that really does affect performance in a big way. We work with a really huge mask advertiser now, and they're in partnership with another agency, and they got hit with this, and it raised CPMs like 2 to 3x because of inventory issues. So be careful before you do it. I think from a budgetary standpoint, purely, how do you start to scale budgets? Really, it's a matter of looking at a couple different things. One is you look at, can I increase the budget? Really, for us, it's 20 to 30% every 48 to 72 hours. It depends on how aggressive you want to be, but there is a stability standpoint that needs to be pushed there. And then I think another budgetary scaling point is, am I showing more than 3 impressions over 7 days to some audiences? And a lot of times people will scale up remarketing or mid-funnel because it's working well, right? The results look good there, but they will not proportionally increase prospecting. So then you'll start just flooding the same people that have already been to your site with something, and you're defeating the purpose of the scale. So making sure that you proportionally, even if the numbers don't look as good, look at the holistic number of CPA on the account, and increasing that from, your prospecting campaigns proportionally as well. So that's the way that we tend to think about scale. And then it really is a question of who else can we potentially show these things to that are going to, convert.
Kind of the horizontal.
Mm-hmm.
And if things don't go well, then we've got the episode RCAB-P process, which is trying to diagnose and go from there.
Absolutely.
What is working? Is there anything that's working great for at least, US-based advertisers? I know that's primarily your audits are based in the US.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'll just list a number of other quick other things. The big one that we've seen working a lot is dynamic ads for broad audiences. This is utilizing your catalog for prospecting, your product catalog for prospecting. That is something that if you have not tried, I would recommend trying again. That is a popular tactic. I think if you haven't tried some sort of broad audience, with a demographic overlay of the ages of the people that convert mostly. So if it's, 18 to 35-year-old females, layering that in and then nothing else, and utilizing exclusions on prospecting to a wide audience, see what can happen there. I think that's a really popular one that is working well right now for a lot of people.
I will echo that and say that the majority of my highest level clients, broad audience, open targeting, is the best performing audience.
Yeah. And it's the most stable because there's the most people in it.
Yep.
Right. So then, and so that's a big thing to consider. And then how do you kind of complement some other prospecting pieces in there with smaller funnels that are going to diversify some of that and not just let Facebook decide all of it. And then I think the third thing is if you haven't thought about your mid-funnel a lot, think about that. One that we really utilize a lot as we do video on top funnel for conversions, and then we'll remarket off of a 50% or a 25% view in mid-funnel. And that's a really nice way that's not dependent on the pixel for building those audiences. And so that's an opportunity for you to just look at that mid-funnel. Have you been targeting your engagers? Are you targeting only people, everybody in the last 365 days? Might be too much. So, what kind of things? I rarely see email built into the mid-funnel either. People that are on the email list or have opened an email that haven't purchased. Target those people. Build out that mid-funnel more, make that more robust. So those are the things I would say right now that are doing pretty well.
All right, big question here. I want the Foxwell guarantee. What's going to happen during Q4?
I mean, it's totally, I think you could think about this from a platform stability standpoint, and you could say, okay, like, is Facebook going to be stable enough? Probably not. I mean, it's just been it's been a joke in some instances. So that's really hard to say what that's going to be like. I think
that's not what I want to hear.
I think that
I want to hear bold predictions.
Sure.
With,
I think it's going to be huge. I think it's going to be huge for some people. And I think if you start your sales early, I think you're going to be successful. I think if you use this time and use early in Q4 to prospect, I think you're going to be in better shape to build those audiences. And I think you want to be thinking about what's a diverse set of content I can use to bring people in to get them interested, so that in November and December, I'm just doing mid to low funnel remarketing.
So I've had a couple conversations with clients recently about obviously like shipping issues and moving things forward with their like planning for Q4, just to get ahead of the fact that there will be some shipping issues. One thing my belief is that until the election's over and like the week after the election, it's going to be hard to capture attention, just because we've got in the US at least, we've got a level of noise that, there's always a lot of noise, but the level of noise right now is so incredibly high. My thought process and my belief is that until after the election, people aren't going to really shift towards holiday mode until mid-November. And we'll see what happens. And obviously, like every month this year has felt like 3 to 6 months. And so we don't know what's going to happen, but I think there's an opportunity to, have good success launching your holiday type stuff mid-November. I haven't seen great success launching holiday style stuff now.
No, I agree. No, I think early to mid-November is good. We have a client that is, they did this last year. It actually worked really well. And it was each week was its own theme of November. And that worked great because people were ready to buy. They were interested. And that was positive for them. So
Andrew, this has been awesome.
Yeah. Thank you.
Great to have you back here and to get some of your wisdom on this. I would love to hear from listeners. Best place to hit us up is on Twitter. Let us know.
Absolutely.
All right, here we go. Well, it don't matter. You got money. You ain't got no soul.
Hey, this is Andrew Foxwell. Are you prepared for Q4? Let us help you. We've created a course at Foxwell Digital that you can check out called the Q4 Tactical Roadmap, your guide to a profitable Q4, that comes with also a Facebook group that's called the Q4 Facebook Helpline to make sure that you have people that are there for you during Q4 to help with any Facebook ads related questions. And it comes included in your purchase of the course itself. You can check out the course, the Q4 Technical Roadmap, at foxwelldigital.com/courses.